Okay, so today I wanted to make a video, some of my thoughts on rape, sexism, and racism. And I've done a previous video about the connections between rape, sexism, and homophobia. And I felt like it was important. Rape is an important topic to me because I really don't think that enough is done to try and prevent it, and I really also think that a lot of people hold a lot of myths about it that aren't true, and I want everyone and societal institutions as well to be more proactive about preventing rape, and I really think that that would make society better overall. And I was reading a book recently called Women, Culture, and Politics by Angela Davis. It was written in the late 80s, but I'm sure a lot of it is still relevant now. And she did a chapter in there about rape. And one thing that I noticed that I wanted to comment on, because I felt like it was a very glaring omission, is she didn't talk about the rapes that males experience and boys. And I think that if we're really going to get to the bottom of why rape is such a problem, I really think that that is a big thing that needs to be talked about, because I mean, statistically, males that are sexually abused as children are more likely to become sexual predators themselves. So it just seemed so crazy to have a whole chapter talking about rape and not mention the rape that some boys experience and some men experience in prison, for example. Which is something that our society, I believe, should do much more to prevent. Instead of trying to prevent it, it seems like our society sort of treats male-on-male rape in prison as a big joke, and I mean, that's just horrible. To me, I just think that rape is a horrible thing, and whether it's a child or a woman or a man that's experiencing it, it's horrible and it shouldn't happen. And like I said, I felt like that was just a very glaring omission on her part. I mean, I understand that the main focus of her book was women, but if you're really going to get to the bottom of why rape happens and try to prevent it, I think that you really need to address the sexual abuse of males too, because it's just as much of an important human rights issue as the rapes that women experience. And I think that by not addressing it, you're not going to be able to effectively combat rape. And anyway, that was just a thought that I had while I was reading it. Some things that she did point out in that chapter that were interesting, she talked about how statistically, you know, even though there's sort of this, certainly historically there has been a certain amount of fear in white society about black men raping white women, and you know, anybody that knows anything about American history knows that that has been the reason why a lot of lynchings have occurred, because either a black man was accused of raping a white woman or of, you know, behaving sexually inappropriately toward her in some way. And the irony of that, which I don't know if you would really call it irony, I think it's a product of a psychological projection on the part of white people, white men in particular. They're paranoid about black men raping their women because they systematically sexually abused black women for so many years, and I think still that probably, well, still, I mean, she talks about in the book, I mean, this is the late 80s, but I'm sure it's probably still true that it's more likely for a white man to rape a black woman than it is for a black man to rape a white woman. And I guess a lot of people probably aren't aware of that fact. But she also talks in the book about how white men, when they're accused of rape, are less likely to be convicted than black men, and how, you know, a disproportionately high percentage of the rape convictions that happen, which the rape conviction in the U.S. isn't very high, but she talked about how a disproportionate number of the rapists that were convicted were black, and I think that is a function of racism and also a function of the fact that black men tend to have fewer financial resources than white men, and anybody who knows anything about our criminal justice system knows that if you are poor, you are not, you know, you're more likely to be arrested in the first place. If you are arrested, you're more likely to go to trial, you're more likely to be convicted, and you're also more likely to receive a harsh sentence versus if you have money. And I really, knowing that things are that way, I don't know how they could even have the nerve to call it a justice system, because justice really doesn't have a lot to do with that. It's just it's class warfare, and it's also racism, and it's sad. So I want to talk about that problem. I just did. I also want to talk about sexism, and the fact that I think that rape against women, to an extent, is taken more seriously than rape against men and boys, and I just think that that's horrible. One thing that I fervently believe, a lot of these male rights activists, some of them do go a little over the top as far as pushing a pro-male rights agenda, but I do think that men do have a lot of things to rightly complain about when it comes to sexism. Just the fact that boys are, and men are, stereotyped as being more violent and sexual predators. I don't see how that could not be psychologically damaging to men and boys, and it's hurtful. You know, even if it's true that men are naturally more violent, and you know, it's not just a function of social conditioning, I still think that it's wrong to stereotype all men that way, because even if men are more violent, the average man isn't a rapist, and the average man isn't, you know, overtly violent. So I just don't think that all men should be assumed to be that way. And when people try to make jokes about, you know, rape, male-on-male rape in prison, that's just horrible, and it's dehumanizing, and it is sexist, and you know, I really think that people need to change their attitudes as far as that goes. I was debating with someone on a thread about, you know, basically a male rights advocate that was stating that he felt that men shouldn't be forced into parenthood, like that they should have the same rights that women have, and since women are able to have an abortion, that men should be able to basically not be forced to pay child support for the children that they fathered. And I could sort of see his point, but at the same time, I don't think that you can really give men equal rights to women with respect to pregnancy and child rearing simply because men don't get pregnant. I think that if men don't want to be fathers, they need to, watch where they put their penis, and if they don't want to have children, then they need to use protection or either abstain from intercourse, and then problem solved. But one point that he did make that really stuck in my head that I wanted to bring up was how boys, 15, 16-year-old boys, when they father children, end up getting stuck paying, being legally responsible for child support. And that does seem wrong to me, because you can't sign a legal contract when you're 15 or 16, and there are a lot of other decisions that you can't make. You can't get a lease or a loan in your name, and that kind of thing. So it does seem unfair in those instances for those specific people to be held responsible for child support. I understand why it's that way, but I mean, ostensibly it's for the benefit of children, but I think that our society needs to do more to prevent the sexual victimization of teenage boys by older women. I mean, that kind of thing needs to be taken as seriously as it is in reverse, when teenage girls hook up with men that are much older than them. And it's just not that way, and it's a very clear case of sexism. I don't know exactly how we'd go about fixing it, but I did think that he made a good point, so I wanted to bring that up. Let's see. Talking about sexism, and something that I felt that I have been made aware of recently. I watched a video that was talking about this slut walk that they had in London, and basically it was a movement that was started because a policeman was asked why they didn't do more in this particular area of town that was notorious for women being raped, why the police didn't do more to prevent women being raped. And his response was that basically that if women didn't dress like sluts, then they wouldn't have to worry about being raped as much. And the reason I find the idea, well, there are a few reasons why I find the idea offensive, that basically, if a woman dresses in a sexually provocative manner, somehow she's asking to be raped, or at least, women should understand that some men have that perception, and for that reason they should, dress conservatively. The thing that really bothered me was not only that is sort of blaming the rape victim and trying to cast shame on rape victims, which I think is just inappropriate, but also, when other people are raped that aren't women, for example, children or men, no one ever asks what they were wearing, or, what... So that's the fact that women are told that if they dress a certain way that they're less likely to be raped. I think it's clearly sexism against women. And like I said, it's no one, even the people that were arguing with me on that thread, telling me that you know, that the cop is right, that women should dress, you know, in a certain manner in order to reduce their chances of being raped. No one could tell me why, you know, other rape victims, like children and men, aren't held to those standards. Not one person could tell me that. So, if anyone out there is watching this video and you have an answer to that question, other than the obvious, to me, the obvious answer is that it's sexism. If you have another answer, reasonable, then, you know, comment on the video and let me know. But to me, it was pretty clear cut. And one last comment I wanted to make about, this has more to do with racism and, well, sexism also to a certain extent too, but mostly racism. I came across this video about basically telling black women that that they needed to do more to be with black men, you know, as far as marriage and relationships, because white men didn't want them anyway. I wish I had a link to the video. I probably would never be able to find it again. But I was just appalled by this video, because I felt like it was really trying to tell black women that they weren't as sexually desirable as white women, and I just don't agree with that at all. And I really don't think that there would be so many cases of white men fetishizing black women to a great extent if they weren't found to be sexually desirable. Now, true, because of racism and a certain dehumanization that goes on of black women, I guess you could maybe say that a white man would be less likely to marry them or whatever, but still, I don't know, to tell black women that they don't have the option to date white men, and that they needed to basically do more to accept black men because of that, I didn't agree with that. I just felt like it was trying to put black women down and undermine their self-esteem, and I just couldn't believe that anyone would make a video like that. And you know, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if that is the typical mentality of black men, that, you know, that they're doing black women a favor by being with them because, you know, when no one else wants to be, it's no wonder that a lot of black women, you know, don't want to get married. I certainly wouldn't want to marry someone who is, you know, looking down their nose at me and thinking that I should be grateful that they wanted me because, you know, no one else would. That was just a disgusting attitude. And when I watched the video, I was just thinking, well, you know, gosh, mystery solved as to why a lot of black women don't get married, because they shouldn't have to. You know, if that's the typical attitude that black men have, that sort of entitlement, that is just not very attractive. And anyway, hope I didn't offend too many people with that, but I was just sort of giving my random thoughts. And I hope you enjoyed my video, and Have a great night.